I'm Stephanie, and welcome to Books and Bubbly. This is the playlist where I drink something bubbly while talking about a book that I get all bubbly about. And today I'm going to be talking about a book that I was pleasantly surprised with, which is The Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli. I am saying that the Italian way, it could be Ciccarelli. If we're going the American pronunciation, I'm going to say Ciccarelli, so I do apologize in advance if that is incorrect. I do want to say that there will be spoilers in this review, so fair warning now. Turn away if you have not read this yet. But I picked this up, and I say I am pleasantly surprised by it because one of my New Year's resolutions, or my bookish New Year's resolutions, was to read more from genres that I don't normally gravitate towards, and that includes fantasy. I have struggled in the past with fantasy, but I really wish I could get into it, so I am trying to make a better effort this year. And I had picked this up through my Book of the Month subscription, as I had really high hopes for it because it's about witches, and I love witchy reads. It's not that big, and I believe it's just the duology, so I felt like, okay, if I really like this one, then I can continue on. I'm not signing up for like a 9-book series here, so this felt like a very good foray into fantasy for me. But let's go ahead and see what this one promised. Enemies to Lovers doesn't get more high stakes than a witch and a witch hunter falling in love in best-selling author Kristen Ciccarelli's latest romantic fantasy. On the night Rune's life changed forever, blood ran in the streets. Now, in the aftermath of a devastating revolution, witches have been diminished from powerful rulers to outcasts ruthlessly hunted due to their waning magic, and Rune must hide what she is. Spending her days pretending to be nothing more than a vapid young socialite, Rune spends her nights as the Crimson Moth, a witch vigilante who rescues her kind from being purged. When a rescue goes wrong, she decides to throw the witch hunters off her scent and gain the intel she desperately needs by courting the handsome Gideon Sharp. He's a notorious and unforgiving witch hunter loyal to the revolution, and, too late, Rune realizes, she might be falling for him. Gideon loathes the decadence and superficiality Rune represents, but when he learns the Crimson Moth has been using Rune's merchant ships to smuggle renegade witches out of the Republic, he inserts himself into her social circles by pretending to court her. He soon realizes that beneath her beauty and shallow facade is someone fiercely intelligent and tender who feels like his perfect match. Except, what if she's the very villain he's been hunting? So overall, I really liked this and found this to be a very compelling read. I was always eager to pick it back up. And as I said, I'm not a big fantasy girly, but I was always really excited to get back into this world. So I'm going to break this review up into 2 parts. I'm going to talk about the things that I absolutely loved about this book, but there are a few things that I do have to talk about that I didn't absolutely love about this book, but they're pretty minor on the scale. Because I will say, again, I still really enjoyed this. So the first thing that I really loved about this read is the magic system. I was so happy that this book actually had magic and legitimate witches. Now, I will say I was confused a bit at first at how the magic worked, but once I got it, I really loved it. In this world, witches need blood to cast spells. It can be their own, which would leave witches with like casting scars from where they draw the blood. They basically turn into like silver tattoos that mark on their body where they got the blood from and then that it was used for magic. Or in Rune's case, she uses other blood that kind of comes from her monthly cycle and collects it and then uses that blood. But it means that her magic isn't as powerful because the fresher the blood, the better it works. Now, I will say we all have our own ick tolerances, but this didn't really bother me. Like, I saw a lot of reviews on Goodreads that this element really grossed them out, and that's fair. But for me, I don't know, I thought it was kind of a clever way for Rune to get blood without marking herself as a witch, and without outing herself by asking from it for others. And it gave a logical reason why Rune can't do as much magic, as she's kind of limited on her blood supply and only re-ups once a month. We also find out that witches can use the blood of other people, but if you use blood that was taken without consent, it will start to corrupt the witch. It's basically alluded as like an addiction. Like they will continue to crave more. They will essentially lose their humanity. They'll basically just become a corrupt witch. And it basically becomes an addiction. You can cast more powerful spells and use more powerful magic, but you will lose yourself in the process. It felt very like Jedi versus Sith, like beware of the dark side. If once you start down the dark path, forever it will dominate your destiny. Consume you it will, as it did your father. And I kind of liked that. I liked that there were stakes to magic. But again, they still need blood to draw their spell marks or their runes and then cast their magic through it. And with the spell casting, they also leave like a signature, so that's why it's the Crimson Moth. Like it kind of leaves like an imprint of the witch's signature behind. Then we also find out that magic has a specific smell that's specific to the witch that cast it. I will say the last two details I felt were a bit superfluous, but they work within the story and they were consistent, at least. Like there are times that one of the characters thinks he's smelling a witch that he knows, but he's like, that doesn't make any sense because she should be dead, but he knows her scent very well. I actually don't know if we get told what runes magic scent is. But either way, like it's still a pretty consistent thing throughout the story. I really liked the blood magic, and I enjoyed how the magic system worked in this world. Again, I give Ciccarelli a lot of kudos for actually keeping it consistent, sticking to her rules, and creating boundaries. These witches either have to choose to corrupt themselves, they can find blood that was given freely, or they can use their own, but it will mark them as a witch, and people who have casting scars are basically purged. They are not allowed to live. I would say the world building is the next thing that I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed it for a reason that a lot of readers did not like this book, which is a little funny. So the world building worked for me because it's kind of minimal. Now, this is an area of fantasy that I really do struggle with, and it's kind of a reason that I don't read much from this genre. I often feel fantasy books spend too much time building the world, and they go on and on and on for pages and pages when I just want to get to the story. I don't need the breakdown of how the currency works. I don't need the breakdown of how time works. I don't need a lecture on the culture wars here. Like, I've read a few fantasies that just info dump everything, and it's just chunks and chunks and chunks of history and data that I have to keep track of. Whereas I felt in this, it was weaved in to the other story that's happening around it. I can understand the history without having to hit pause and basically read everything that I need to know. I felt I understood the world and knew what I needed to know to continue through the story without being like, well, wait, what? How does this work? What is that? Who is this? Like, what's the royalty? I felt that Ciccarelli did a really good job of keeping the story moving, dropping little hints, dropping context so we could keep the story moving instead of having to be like, okay, let me tell you like why this is the way it is. Like, I appreciate that she just kept stuff moving. Because like I said, I don't need 10 pages of history of the land, breakdown of the culture, overly detailed descriptions of buildings, clothing, or the setting. In fantasy, I've kind of found that like too much detail tends to overwhelm me. It's kind of why I quit like Lord of the Rings when I was in high school. Like everyone, I too went and saw the movies and absolutely loved them, and then I was like, I'm gonna read the books. I tried so hard to get into the fellowship, but I remember feeling like the story was not moving. We'd spent like 50 pages just describing the Shire and hobbits. Like, I get it. Can we actually see Frodo like leave his house, take a step, take a breath, do an action? And I get it. Many readers love that, and I can see why this might not appeal to all fantasy readers because it kind of bypasses that. They love the immersion. And if you love that, I love that for you. For me, I don't need that. And again, I think that's why this really worked for me. It dropped enough detail and gave me enough of the context that I needed without slowing the story down. I understood the world, and I just wanted to get back to seeing a powerful witch evade a witch hunter. Which brings me to the next thing that I really did love about this book. which is our heroine or protagonist, and that is Rune. I really loved Rune. She is Batman, but she's also a witch. She is rich, she holds a place in high society, and yet she is secretly a vigilante freeing her kind at night. She's hiding out in plain sight and plays the role of basically like a dim-witted socialite to operate right under the witch hunters' noses, as well as, I guess, like under the government so they don't find out what she's up to. I loved the scenes where she is trying to free witches before their executions. I loved the action scene when she goes to save a witch but then realizes, like, oh, this was a trap set for the Crimson Moth, like, whoops. And she has to think on her feet and tap into her magic to save herself, and at the same time figure out how she's going to create an alibi and use her place in society to project her innocence. I loved it. I just wanted so much more of it. Rune is smart and witty and has dedicated her life to saving her kind as sort of a penance for basically at the time of the revolution when witches first started being hunted. She outed her grandma as a witch. Now, when she did this, she did not know that she was a witch herself. I have a feeling this is going to tap into kind of like the Chosen One prophecy in book 2, because I believe her grandma adopted her. And they made a point of saying like her parents weren't witches. So I'm like, so was this actually her grandma and she knows who her mom is? Again, there is a book 2, so I'm going to bet that we'll go into that more. But anyway, when the revolution started, they were hounding up witches, and so to stay safe, because her grandma did not want her dying with her, and witch sympathizers will also be rounded up and exterminated, her grandma basically tells her, like, you have to out me and you have to let me go. You have to let them take me. I will be killed, but you will still be safe and you will be alive, and like I don't want to go, and I don't want you to go with me. And so through this, after Rune does realize she is a witch, she starts working in secret to free other witches to make it up to her nan, as well as just to save innocent people. These witches haven't done anything. They are just being rounded up for being born the way they were. I really like that Rune is level-headed, organized, and again, she's just written to be really smart and cunning, which as a Slytherin, I appreciate. I like that. I will say she does seem to get a little dumber as the book went on, and especially when it starts focusing on the romance more, which was very unfortunate. She was such a cool girl, and then she's like, oh, a boy, and all the brain cells just float right on out of her head. But I still really liked her. Like, there's a scene after she and Gideon, the main witch hunter, like, they hook up, and she ends up hearing him talk to his fellow soldiers that, oh, it meant nothing. I was just, trying to get her naked so I could check out her body to make sure she had no casting scars, which is, I mean, it's also gross. But they're both using each other, so, I don't know, it's kind of a gray area. But she knows he is suspicious of her and trying to find the Crimson Moth and out her as a witch. She's also courting him to get information and using him. But she has like a genuine freak out when she hears this, instead of being like, oh yeah, he's playing the game too. So at that point, I was just kind of like, come on, Rune. If you're supposed to be this cunning and figuring out how to hide out in plain sight and play society, really use that against these people, are we sure we want to do that? But Gideon, our hero, doesn't get out of the stupid card scot-free either. He's also supposed to be cunning and smart and extremely sharp and observant. Until he isn't, so then the plot can happen. He has to ignore or miss small things to build intrigue when it should have been something that basically like set off all of his little alarm bells, such as his brother Alex, who is best friends with Rune. But his brother wants him to gamble this access coin that he needs to use in order to get to like certain restricted areas of the prison. And he doesn't question why his brother's making him do that. Or there's the fact that there is this rich man who is in cahoots with the Crimson Moth, who wears a distinctive silver ring on his pinky finger. Gee, Gideon, I wonder who that could be. We only mentioned that Alex wears this distinctive silver ring on his pinky finger every time he's brought up on page. Like, between the two, I loved Rune a lot more, and I was a little meh about Gideon. Like, his backstory is extremely tragic, and I can understand his anger, but his anger really should just be directed at one witch, not all of them. His trauma is severe in this, as the book does talk about SA, just in case that's a trigger for you, but it does make him very one-dimensional at times, and I felt like I was kept at arm's length, even though this is a dual first-person point of view. I'm in his head, but there are still times that I'm like, what are we doing? The next thing I really loved about this were the themes. A big theme of this is revolutions and revolting and basically going against the powers that be. And I thought these were really well done. Both of the groups that have held power are definitely not perfect. And who the people that benefit from rubbing elbows with these current leaders are also not perfect. They're not the ones who end up suffering from these revolutions. I really liked how it took a good hard look at those who want power will use fear and make false promises to gain power and then do nothing good with it. Almost like maybe we're living in those times. Who knows? The last thing that I really loved about this book was the pacing. Felt very, again, similar to the world building. Like, it just worked for me. This was not nonstop action, but it also was not nonstop descriptions of the world or clothing like some other fantasies I've struggled with. I felt like the plot kept moving while weaving in backstory, and we had the right amount of conversations that we needed to hear. Like, truly, I was never bored while reading this. And I took this on vacation, and I was very excited when it was time to go to bed at night, because I'm like, oh, great, I get to read a little bit more before I go off to bed. I absolutely devoured this, and I was entertained. I was so into it. But like I said, there were a few things that I did not like about this read that I do want to talk about a little bit more. I will be talking about this book in my what I read in March video, where I'll do a non-spoiler version of this review. So I just want to take this time to talk about a few things that I felt didn't really work with the story, or that just jumped out to me as things that I didn't like. So the first one is Gideon's motivation. So it's revealed why Gideon is basically taking part in this genocide against witches, and it's because he was the boy toy for one of the witch queens. Cressida? It's Cressida. I think I said it like 3 different ways in my own head. It's the other thing with fantasy. I'm like, some of these names, it's like almost like Harry Potter again. Like Hermione, like nobody knew how to say that, so J.K. Rowling had to spell it out for us in the book. Anyway, so Cressida kept him around as her fun time playmate. And again, it's pretty much SA. He did not want to be in this position that he was put in. He is taunted and called her whore, and he really hates himself. She was able to have some of her hold on him as she took the lives of his parents and his sister and threatened Alex as well. I understand his anger and hatred and fury towards Cressida. I can understand why he wants her dead. She is awful, and he should hate her and those like her. But his hatred toward her kind of blinds him, and he takes it out on innocent women who didn't choose to be born as witches. He takes the lives of children. He's fine with others suffering to get rid of all the witches, regardless of how they use their magic, or even if they use it at all. And he doesn't really seem to have any remorse or like any twinges of guilt or like questioning if he could potentially be in the wrong here. It was just very frustrating, as he hates that he was used and manipulated, but then is also okay with it when he does it to Rune. Like, he's having relations with her as a means to an end, and, again, seeing her naked so he can check her body for scars and investigate her and either clear her or convict her of being a witch. I mean, do we want to think about that, Gideon? Maybe let's just take a pause here. Which then does bring into question how Rune is even attracted to him in the first place. Like, the enemies to lovers thing, he definitely views witches as his enemy. She kind of views him as her enemy, but she's also kind of into it, and she kind of likes him. But I don't know why, because this man is hunting down her people to exterminate them. Like, there's this whole subplot of the story where Rune is trying to rescue this witch, Seraphine. She knew that they were probably coming for her, so she was trying to get to her first. Gideon and his guards got there first. They roughed her up and threw her in jail, and they are going to string her up and kill her. And we find out basically that, yeah, Seraphine is a witch, but she wasn't like working alongside the queens, it doesn't sound like, or it just doesn't sound like she was using her magic to harm others. So the fact that Gideon is okay taking this woman and purging her when she really hasn't done anything terrible with her magic just felt kind of weird that Rune is, on this path to fall in love with this guy. Like, he wants to take her out and not on a date, and she compares needing him to needing air. I get that it raises the stakes and makes their love, forbidden and full of angst. But she doesn't really hate him enough for what he's doing to her kind. And again, he doesn't have those hints of maybe this is wrong. And that's where they start to bridge the gap. And even if he knew she was a witch and realizing oh, I've been killing innocent people, maybe I should make up for that. It just, for me, it kind of soured the romance aspect. I'm hoping this is going to be the arc in the second book where he does realize the pain he has caused and has to come to terms with his actions of basically that whole hurt people, because that is what Gideon is doing. So the next thing I want to talk about that I didn't absolutely love about this is the character of Alex, who is Gideon's younger brother and Rune's best friend. Alex knows Rune is a witch and is helping her out as the Crimson Moth. He is very aware of who she truly is. And I really did like Alex. Was he a bit of a simp and the BFF carrying a torch? Yeah. But he seems like a genuine good guy and not a nice guy, TM. He loved Rune and didn't force her to love him back or call her names because she wouldn't be with him or have sex with him. It became very obvious that he is into her. But also, my guy, state your intentions, use your words, tell her you are in love with her, otherwise you can't really be that pissed that she's not picking up what you're laying down. There does end up being a love triangle, which I really wish hadn't been a thing in this, and it could have just been him being worried for Rune, knowing how ruthless his brother is, and what a dangerous game her pretending to like Gideon would be. I really would have loved to see a platonic guy-girl friendship, but of course no. Alex was really interesting, but upon further reflection, his character doesn't fully make sense to me. So he and Gideon are brothers, and Alex is in high society, but Gideon is over here not knowing which fork to use for the salad course. I needed a bit more backstory on when and how their paths diverged and how they could both make some of the choices that they do. Because later in the book, we get the big reveal. So when the revolution started, Alex helped Gideon kill the witch queens. And there's also this other character, I think his name is Nicholas. He's basically the leader of this army. So he found Gideon, who was in a rough state, helped train him up, give him a purpose. And then Alex also came in because he knew his brother probably would not be able to kill Cressida on his own. Cool. So Alex joins Gideon and Nicholas and is going to take out the witch queens, and so they can hand over power to this new republic. We learn that Alex is the one who killed Cressida, the witch who is lording her power over Gideon after taking his family from him, and also pretty much threatening that she would end Alex too if Gideon didn't bend to her will. We find out that Gideon isn't the one who killed her. Alex did. Except we also find out that no, Alex didn't actually follow through with it. He just shot his gun up into the ceiling and told her to run far away and never look back. Which it doesn't make sense. It does for the story, because then we find out that Cressida has been also hiding in plain sight, as she has taken on the identity of one of Rune's friends named Verity, and has been a part of the story the entire time. She's just wearing a new face. Now, I get the thematic reasoning for him not wanting to take her life, as he does not want to become a killer. But also, this woman tortured and assaulted your brother. She took the lives of your sister in a very painful way, and also your parents. She is completely corrupted by her magic. She will not go down a path of redemption. She does not care. Alex knows this and lets her go. Like, I'd almost wish he had found another witch to, like, bind her powers, or he put some, like, spell on her that she cannot use her magic again. Or hell, I would even take that, like, when he went to kill her, he thought he had, but she had cast a spell on him or created an illusion so that he thought she was dead. Like, otherwise, Alex, come on, use your brain. You cannot be this stupid to think that this power-hungry, corrupted witch will just go, oh, okay, thanks for sparing me, check you later, and, like, leave the island. She's not. She's you can't be this dumb, can you? Because no, she just sat there and stewed in her own bitterness and was figuring out how she can unleash her wrath on everyone. Again, Alex, you think she's going to care that you spared her? She will not. You mean absolutely nothing. She's going to come back for her revenge. You cannot be this dumb. But he is. And then she intends to end Gideon, and Alex steps in front of his brother and takes the bullet and dies. I mean, I guess that's one way to end the love triangle nonsense. I mean, on the one hand, I guess it's much better than Alex falling in love with Rune and Gideon's future child, a la Jacob Black, but it still felt really cheap. Alex became nothing more than a plot device, and something that was standing in the way of Rune and Gideon getting their happily ever after. Well, not anymore, he's dead. Just what a waste of a good character. Again, I really wish he had just been her friend and loved her in a platonic way, or even like a brotherly way. But no, of course, everyone's in love with Rune. We have to have two men pining after her who are both brothers. Which, there is also another scene where she has just hooked up with Gideon, and then she overhears him talking to a soldier, so she runs away in her little tizzy, and then agrees to marry Alex and kisses him. Have you even brushed your teeth yet? So, again, there were some things that I did not love about this, but overall, I still really found this to be a great read. Even with the issues with Gideon and his brother, and just some of like the history that was happening there, I still gave this 4 stars. I thought this was a fantastic read. The pacing, the world building, and the magic were absolutely great in this. Now, I will say, while I do love the magic system, I really wish we had spent more time putting it into action. Like, again, I love that scene where Rune is trying to get Seraphine out, but realizes it's a trap. It was so great. It had so much tension. I wanted to see her wielding her magic more and learning how to control it and finding out different ways to get blood. I'm really, really hopeful that this is a big part of book 2, and we see Rune learning the full extent of her magic and practicing it and reuniting with the witches that she has saved and gets that opportunity to learn and grow from them. I'm really excited to pick up the next book, which I've already ordered through Book of the Month. And I found this to be a really good fantasy read as someone who isn't a typical fantasy reader. If you have any recs for fantasies that are like this or that deal with witches and magic in a really cool way that maybe aren't too heavy on the spicy scenes, please leave your recommendations in the comments below. Otherwise, thanks for joining me at Books and Bubbly.